All right, so for this week for my cross-cultural vlog, I really wanted to talk about just some of the different things we talked about on the February 14th lecture, and particularly on scientific empiricism and how some cultural groups might not receive that maybe as well because of just kind of an emphasis on harmony and things not necessarily being linear. So I don't know. I just think it's interesting, especially being in a PhD program. You're taught, and I think it's not just in this lecture, but like in other lectures we've talked about. Sometimes you have to deviate from maybe the one way that you're used to orienting your practice. Maybe like your orientation is really CBT, but at times with your client, you might not. It might not be the best thing to use a straight CBT approach with them. It might be better to use maybe more of an MST, multi-systemic therapy approach with them. It might be better to do something more of a dialectical behavioral approach. But I think it's understandable that I think it's really interesting, being in school and particularly a PhD program when you're integrating research and practice. So they're telling you what best practice is and you're learning things, just as they are, like kind of the ideal of what, the practice looks like. And oftentimes, because of just all the nuances that we navigate as practitioners with, who an individual is, the forces that are in their lives as far as family and friends and their background, how that can sometimes make certain aspects of something that may be empirically validated, it may not be the best thing for them. And I think that is really where the art of, clinical practice comes in. So yeah, it's just something that I've been thinking about in working with clients, that oftentimes we go into our sessions or our different aspects of our practice with some sort of framework of like how we're going to deal with it and how we're going to approach it, and we think it's going to be A, B, C, and D in the session, and the session's going to go a certain way, and oftentimes our clients will come in with a totally different set of things than we expected. Certain issues arise, and even when you first have a client come in, they have you're given their background information and you're kind of starting to conceptualize a case. It's so interesting to see the beginning of your case conceptualization and where that was at to the end of it. And sometimes it goes a totally different direction than you thought it would. And I think also, just in thinking about best practice and doing things, in an evidence-based way, it's great to have that structure and it's great to have these manuals that we go by, but I think sometimes we can lose the real treatment and the real path to treatment for our clients if we are so stuck on what the manual is telling us to do next, or what best practice is. But yeah, oftentimes I don't think I've had a case where it's gone how I expected it to, and it's always been it's just something where adaptability is so important, and I think that's also part of what we emphasize in this course about it's good to have an idea of potentially what certain characteristics and certain preferences and certain ways of responding that different backgrounds might bring, but I think it's also it's also harkens back to just really having an understanding of the individual that we're working with beyond their context, and who is that person, and so that's kind of, I think that that's kind of analogous to thinking about best practice versus having that adaptability to whoever your client is and maybe being more eclectic with your approach. It's also, not going by the book with what we know empirically maybe about certain cultural backgrounds, but really getting to know that individual, understanding that, with certain individuals or just any person and the backgrounds that they have, they might, just based on what we've learned, they might respond a certain way, but beyond that, they might, they're their own unique individual, and that really contributes something unique and particular, that I think that's where really the art of clinical practice comes in, is having our knowledge in our back pocket, but being able to be like, okay, so I know this, but what is actually at hand here, and how do I need to respond and adapt and contextualize specifically to this in order to treat and make progress well with this client. So, all right, thanks.